there's going to be a lunch and then a spot after all the sessions. But for now, we got some really cool speakers coming in. And I just want to thank you all. I want to thank everyone here for coming. I'm part of e-commerce Fuel. And if you're in e-commerce Fuel and you're in the New York City chapter, my goal is to host events, not this big every time, it's way too much work. Once a year, we'll have like a big event, and then I think our goal is gonna be to have like 5 small events, just come and chat, and then maybe a holiday party. So I'm hoping to bring the New York City community and e-commerce field together more often. First, just because it's fun to hang out with you guys. And also, like, if we meet up regularly and chat and help each other out, we're all gonna grow together, and that's really fun. So to kick it off, first I wanted to thank Shopify for letting us use their space. This is a really cool spot. It's a really cool service that they do for the community. And I'm actually gonna have Sophie talk about how you guys, if you guys wanted to, this space is actually free to use. And if you're a brand that wants to host like a pop-up, she would be the person to reach out to. So Sophie, if you just want to talk about it a little.
Well, thank you. I mean, you said it. He said everything. He did it for me. But we just want to say welcome on behalf of Shopify. We're really excited to have you all here today. And if you are interested in an opportunity with us, hosting an event here, partnering with us, you can go ahead and scan our QR code. So if you'd like to do that now, it'll take you directly to our intake form where we'll just gather some information about what you're interested in doing here. And then our partnerships manager will reach out to you. So
awesome.
Thanks again.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, they actually have, like, the upstairs is like a merchandising station, and they have a point of sale. So if you as a brand want to host like a D2C event, people will be able to check out.
Yes, and we have all of our retail hardware here, and all of that we can get into when we meet with you face-to-face, one-on-one to talk about your event. But awesome. There's a lot of opportunities here.
All right, round of applause for Shopify for letting us have the event here.
Thanks, everybody.
Sweet. So I'm gonna introduce our first speaker. We got Courtney. She was nice enough to come here. She'll tell you about her brand herself, but she's gonna talk to us about paid media. And Kate is our sponsor from Bridge. I just want to give a shout out. She actually got all the speakers for the event. I did none of it. So thanks, Kate, and they'll host the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. Excited to be here. Just a quick intro on myself. I'm Kate Stevens, the founder and CEO of Bridge. So when you sell through channels like retail and Amazon and lose that customer relationship, we help you bridge that, offline and online. Very excited today to be chatting with Courtney Toll, the founder of Nori, who's both a friend and a customer of ours. So Courtney, would love to have you introduce yourself and also Nori and why, you guys are qualified to be talking about paid ads today.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I've been in this space a few times, typically in your seats, so fun to be up here on the other side. But my name's Courtney Toll. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nori. Nori is a clothing care brand with the mission of increasing the longevity of your wardrobe. We produce hardware products and laundry liquid products. Our viral product is called the Nori Press, one of Oprah's favorite things. It's a viral handheld steam iron. Only a few women in the room, I think, but have any of you ever ironed with a hair straightener? Yes, I'm seeing some hands. Okay, so you get the pain point here. But basically launched in May of 2021, kind of an interesting time to be launching an iron, coming right out of COVID, people sort of coming back to life, excited to look good and feel good again. So some advantageous timing on our side. But basically, we've been able to scale the brand to about an 8-figure business in under 2 years. The coolest part is that we've achieved almost a 5-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio, which is very much why I'll be talking about paid media today.
So how did you get started with paid?
So it was interesting because ironing, which is sort of the industry that we were entering with our first product, is a market that lives almost exclusively in big box retail. So to market an iron through Meta was kind of a completely new thing. But one of the very best things about marketing an iron is that it's incredibly demonstrative. So you're swiping a garment with this iron and you're watching wrinkles disappear. It's the type of content that you want to watch. But that said, we weren't 100% sure on what type of creative is going to convert best. So basically started with a lot of creative testing. And we sort of approached it with this horizontal scaling approach, maybe not the fastest way to scale, but definitely effective in validating your creative. So we were testing everything from full reels, UGC mashups, static ads, pictures of the product, press placements repurposed. And we basically started to put them in these fairly broad prospecting markets, and we're scaling them if they were over a 2x return on ad spend about every 3 days by 20%, trying to understand which creatives could really withhold this type of scale. And what we quickly found is that highly demonstrative UGC mashups, where you're understanding what the product does in the very first second, has the highest conversion, quickly followed by press that is being repurposed. This is a little bit of a higher price point item, $120, and so press and also retail, as seen in Crate & Barrel or Nordstrom, which came later on, does really well in a paid capacity.
And so what is a mashup exactly?
So you guys all know reels. You'll watch a full reel, get ready with me, outfit of the day. But sometimes they can be a little long. They take too long to get to the point. So what we found is that these really quick mashups where you're taking sort of the most important information from a few different reels and making it into one ad is the highest converting for us.
And are those mostly meta ads?
Almost exclusively meta ads.
So once you started figuring out the content that worked, how did you think about scaling that?
Yeah, so who here today is using ASC? Most of you, maybe not all of you. So for those of you that aren't familiar with ASC or Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, this has sort of changed the game on Facebook. Basically, you're allowing Facebook to do a lot of the optimizations for you. So the current plan that's probably most relevant to any recommendation I'm making today, this has changed over the 2 years, to be fair, but we sort of allow general prospecting campaigns to identify our top performing creatives. Any creative over a 2x return on ad spend, we tend to populate into an Advantage Plus shopping campaign. These campaigns are sort of Facebook's way of doing the optimizations for you. If there's a high click-through rate or a high conversion rate, it will allocate more spend to you. So it sort of operates like a CBO where you're putting a set amount of spend and then it's allocating that spend for you across your top performing creatives. And that's allowed us to scale to over $120,000 in ad spend every month and an over 8-figure run rate in terms of top line revenue.
In terms of managing, the creative and your spend, I know that Nori is a very lean team. How did you think about, setting up your team to support that scale?
Yeah, so we're on track to do about $15 million in revenue this year, and we were a 2-person team until about 3 weeks ago. We finally bit the bullet and said, help, someone get in here. But interestingly enough, what we hired for was actually organic acquisition. We probably have become a little too over-reliant on paid acquisition because it's been so successful for us. But we were really running it with an agency, and we still have the same exact agency that we launched with, has been running it. We've capped their fees to keep operating costs really low. But I think that if there's one thing that I can sort of share as advice, it's like, as a founder, really try and teach yourself this stuff because no one's gonna care like you're gonna care. I didn't have the expertise on how to set up Facebook ad campaigns. I didn't know how to initially optimize. So a lot of this was taught to me by our agency, but I threw myself into paid acquisition because I really do believe if you want to succeed as a direct-to-consumer company, there's time for a lot of different marketing efforts, but paid acquisition and meta Facebook advertising specifically, I believe, is at the very heart of that.
Makes complete sense. So you learned from them, but you're on top of them and you learned it yourself.
Yes, exactly.
And so I know, Nori has been expanding into other channels outside of just pure play D2C. What do those channels look like? And how do you think about your CAC across all of those channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned this 5-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. It's not quite that. It's about 4.8 to 1, but we had a $25 CAC last month at an average order value of 120. That is blended across channels. Just Facebook was about $34 last month. So I think that you have to make Meta successful in itself. You can't just look at it from a blended approach. But in this climate, which changed as of like 6 months ago, I feel like everyone's trying to be profitable, and as such a small team, almost all of our spend is going to marketing. So CAC has been so important for us to keep low. A few tactics that have worked well for us in keeping that blended CAC down and trying to even balance out that higher direct-to-consumer number is one, Amazon. Are any of the brands here today also on Amazon? Okay, a lot. So I don't know if you guys are finding this, but for us, Amazon's a harder channel for us to scale. It's not as linear. With direct-to-consumer, you can often put in more spend and acquire more customers, whereas with Amazon, we're finding that we're putting in more spend, and depending on the levels of demand, we can't always directly acquire more customers. I'm seeing some nods. Is this resonating? Okay. So basically, what we've sort of decided is that in non-promotional times, we will try and keep Amazon CAC as low as possible, and that serves as sort of a balance to our direct-to-consumer channel. Amazon's still a worthy addition of revenue. It's not touching direct-to-consumer right now, but it is helping us balance our CAC.
And when you say non-promotional, would that be Prime Day?
Exactly. Yeah, so Amazon, at least in our experience, huge spikes in July, huge spikes in October, huge spikes in November and December. But unless there is a sale for us, we have a hard time, or if we're directing traffic to Amazon, but just living on Amazon, it's not the same sort of linear scaling approach that you can apply to direct-to-consumer, assuming your creatives are optimized.
So I know you launched in the Container Store. I think there's other retailers on the horizon as well. How does that play into the mix?
Yeah, it's interesting because to be a direct-to-consumer company for so long and then all of a sudden to go into retail, you have such control over what you're doing in direct-to-consumer, where every day you can be in your ad account and be making optimizations, and then all of a sudden you're put on a shelf and you're just hoping people pick up that product. So some things to be done in packaging, but I think that the few things that we found successful and therefore blending into our CPA is one, sometimes just directing people to those retailers through paid advertising. It's not probably the most advantageous in terms of margin, but it does give that boost that your buyer then has the incentive to work with you and make further optimizations in store. And then I'm not just saying that because she's sitting next to me, but QR codes have been huge for us. Most people want to put our iron in store, but we now have these other products like fabric shavers and accessories. So if we're trying to increase LTV, if we can make that sale of the Nori press in the Container Store, and then there's a QR code on the package where we're immediately upselling them other products, that's a way to increase our LTV and then balance out the CAC that we put towards trying to acquire that customer in store.
So what's next?
What is next? Black Friday. Are we all okay? I feel like that's what we've all been planning for so long. But Black Friday is next, and I think every year we go into it with even more ambitious goals. Last year, it felt huge at the time. We put $10,000 of ad spend on our ad account. We did about $200,000 in sales. It was a crazy conversion, and we should have pressed so much harder. And so I think that this year we're going to much higher levels of ad spend, and it's just thinking through how you allocate that and not over-index your Advantage Plus shopping campaign. You don't put it all into creative testing. So coming up with new ad campaigns, which can definitely talk about it another time, to be able to withstand that amount of ad spend.
So you briefly touched on this, but can you talk a little bit more about products that are next? Because I know you started with the Nori press, the hardware, moving into the consumables. How do you think about that supporting the brand? What are some of the reasons behind moving into those consumable categories?
Yeah, so our hero product is a handheld steam iron. It's a one-time purchase. There's not a necessary subscription component, which has definitely been an uphill climb in the context of fundraising. But I also think that there's some benefits to this high AOV one-time purchase product. It's a natural sell. There's a lot of marketable opportunities. But then it's coming up with other products that feel adjacent where we can keep our customers coming back. So we do have a subscription product that's actually an ironing water that improves the performance of the iron, as well as our travel case, which has a crazy attachment rate actually. But our strategy as it relates to paid media has sort of been get them in the door with the Nori press, because we can't seem to get the same type of customer acquisition metrics out of any of our other products. So get them in for what the brand is sort of known for, and then use your other aspects of your marketing stack, like email, for example, to bring them back for all those other products and inherently increase LTV.
What has been one of the biggest challenges that you faced growing Nori?
I think that there's so many challenges, but I think that the ability to sort of trust the path that you're on, I think that specific to paid marketing, just because it's been such a big part of our story, it's very easy to sort of think that something's going wrong really, really quickly. All of a sudden your CPA is rising and things feel like they're changing. But what we actually really have seen is that it can just be volatile. Like sometimes just waiting it out and being patient with a creative is what can be most successful. You need to think in the mindset of a consumer, is that the type of ad that I enjoy consuming? And think about the purchase decisions that you're making. I know the Jolie founder is coming up next, but like I'm constantly looking at your ads because I am always thinking about why I made that purchase decision. And you need to trust that gut instinct. So even if you put a creative live and it's not performing yet, or you scaled it and you're starting to see sort of decreasing economies of scale, stick with it and be okay in making big bets. And I think in turn, your company will scale faster.
Hassan, do we have time for Q&A?
We're going to do a quick Q&A. I actually have one question. What is your guys' process for coming up with the ideas for
Nori?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was working in consulting, graduated, lived in the tiniest New York apartment, still do, didn't own an ironing board, couldn't afford dry cleaning, so I'd iron my clothes every single day with a hair straightener. It was one of the only markets I could find that like didn't have this piffy D2C brand or new technology operating in it. And I hated my consulting job so much that I figured if I could raise some money while still in my job, I could start to try and de-risk this, work with some product development managers, and start to build this next generation steam iron. So Nori is iron spelled backwards.
Oh, I didn't know that. And then when you guys are thinking about what ads to create, do you guys have a script? Do you guys have, like, do you have to hire talent? Is it all on the cell phone? Like, how do you?
We do. We've tried a bunch of the UGC agencies. I think there's some that are better than others, but nothing has beat. Basically, we just have individual UGC creators reach out all the time in our DMs. I'm sure all of your brands do, and it's so easy to think, this is annoying, this is a waste of my time. But what we typically try to do is go out to these UGC creators, ask them to create one ad for us for free in exchange for product. If that ad looks good, then we'll contract them for a small amount of money to create 5 or so reels, because again, reels do well from an organic perspective, but the mashups have been the best for us, so we need a heavy amount of content.
Okay, awesome. Anyone have questions? Oh, okay.
When you're scaling your ASC campaigns, how aggressive do you get weekly, daily, et cetera, and do you find your winner and then split the winner creative out, or do you just do the inverse, you just delete everybody else, keep the campaign active, and don't touch it?
It's such a good question, and I feel like ASC is hard because the Facebook recommendation is changing every 2 minutes, right? Like at first it was put in 5 creatives, 10 creatives, now it's throw as many creatives as you possibly can. Yeah, exactly. But honestly, in the last few weeks, what we've actually been trying to do is we had so many creatives in there. So we've been running an A/B test where we put the exact same amount of spend into one ASC campaign and another. we put one with a ton of creatives, probably our top 15 performing creatives, and then we put in another with just our top 5. The one with the top 5 is actually performing a lot better. And so maybe it's an anomaly, but I do think that finding those like 3 to 4 creatives, because at the end of the day, ASE is going to give it to those anyways. And then therefore, if it starts to not work, you're not looking at like all of those ads that are getting $10 of spend a day. You're turning off the one that's getting thousands and putting in a new one, and you're going to be much more iterative.
And you're adding more creatives as you go, or you're just adding budget?
Both. If we see another creative with over a 2x return on ad spend, we do tend to add it. But beyond 10 creatives, we're finding that even if you have like a really good ad, if the ASC has been running for a while, it's always going to prioritize those ones that have so much history behind it. So what we will do now is, if we have an ASC that's running really well, we still will sometimes add our top performers, but we'll try to collect another like 5 top performing ads and create a new ASC. And therefore give those the chance to spend with ASC versus just putting them into the campaign where they're already going to be at a disadvantage to the ads that have that history.
Oh, yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I have a question. Obviously, you guys have achieved growth very quickly. It's impressive. How did you anticipate order inventory, and how did you plan for reaching, say, 15 million in the second year, third year? How did you do that? Did you plan on doing $15 million this year, and how did you purchase enough inventory to keep up with that?
I should have answered this is my biggest challenge because it is the hardest part of running a business. Basically, last year was our first full year of business, and we found out we were going to be in Oprah's Favorite Things in August. And we did the worst thing possible, which is we flew over almost every single unit because we didn't have the inventory to support the opportunity. Rookie's mistake, but live and learn. So basically, there's always air freight. It's going to eat into your margin, and it's really tough. So with projecting out inventory, you're always largely going to get it wrong, but we try to use the first half of the year's sales, specifically promotional windows in the first half of the year, so things like President's Day, to understand the lift of certain ad spend. So if we're going to do X amount of ad spend in Q4, this is the type of lift we see in a promotional period, and that's what we think we're going to do at the end of the year. My biggest recommendation, especially with a high AOV item where inventory is so expensive, is to try and find private investors to do line of credits. We tried a lot of different, I don't even know what you call them, like the Settles and Clearcos. If any of them are here, they're all amazing in their own way, but they can be expensive, understandably, in this climate. So run an RFP and then take it to private investors and say, these are the rates I'm getting. Can you do any better? We're at about 8% right now with a private investor.
What did you say for your team? You mentioned you had one person as of a few weeks ago. Can you touch on sales, customer service, fulfillment, logistics, importing?
Of course. Yeah, largely outsourced. So when we say 2-person team, there's a big team behind the scenes, but it's been myself and my co-founder until this month, October. So basically, fulfillment, we had outsourced via 3PL from the very beginning. We were really lucky that they were willing to grow with us fairly steadily. So we knew from the get-go that they could handle omni-channel, but they've been a big resource and very affordable, which has been great. In terms of agencies, we've also largely stuck with some of our core agencies, but we just try and keep the fee like as very, very low as possible. And I know it sounds so obvious, but like with email, right now we're paying $3,000 a month. There's some amazing email agencies out there that will just do it for a lot less. Our other secret has just been like go-getter freelancers. Our head of PR was the head of PR at Aritzia. She agreed to take on a passion project, and it was half the price of a typical agency, and she's run miles for us. So I think these really sort of go-getter freelancers are kind of the way to go. What I'm finding with bringing on this hire, even though she's awesome, is there's so many unexpected costs with the hire. Like the insurance component and all those things that are so important to offer to your employees, but it's so much more than just that base salary. And God forbid something goes wrong, it's a lot of time and energy to get them off the team. So I think that freelancers and agencies are a really great way to grow a brand that allows you to be fairly iterative.
One more question.
You publish an ad or a creative to run. How long do you give to evaluate whether it needs adjustment or not?
We typically let it spend $200, and that's typically like our first indication of is it a go or a no-go. Not a huge amount of money, but it does give us a sense of does it scale or does it go. If it's like below a 1x return on ad spend, it's like a no-go. If it's anything above, we'll typically give it a little longer, up to $500 in spend, because there could be something within the window that it was live. But beyond $500 in spend, if it's not above like a 1.2, we're typically cutting it.
But ROAS is your go-to metric.
ROAS is interestingly our go-to metric. We definitely look at CPA, but I just feel like CPA fluctuates so much that ROAS seems to be more constant in a campaign, and that's typically our go-to metric, for better or for worse.
Thank you, Courtney. I know I learned a ton.
Oh, good. Thank you guys for having me.